Coming up this week, we get your take on a carbon tax. Also, should there be term limits for federal politicians? This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau put the ultimatum out to the provinces last year. Adopt a carbon tax or one will be imposed on you. A carbon tax is a fee on greenhouse gas emissions, mainly from the burning of fossil fuels. And this carbon tax has caused much friction between some of the provinces and the federal government. So, as a consumer, where does it sit with you? Our question. Do you agree or disagree with a carbon tax?
I agree. I think we all need to pay more attention to how much carbon we're, putting out into the ozone and into our environment. So, in that respect, for sure.
Yeah. And you're okay with paying a tax on that?
I don't mind it. I think it makes us become aware of what we're doing. Financial penalties always seems to get people to react to situations and really revisit how they're contributing. So if there's a benefit in that respect, sure, why not?
Disagree.
Why?
Because right now if our major trade partners don't have it, like the U.S., then to put it mildly, I think we're putting Canada behind the competitive. In terms of economic competitiveness, I think we're putting ourselves at a huge disadvantage, and then the jobs are going to be gone. I disagree. If our major trading partners were doing it, then I would say, yeah, let's do it. But
I do agree with the carbon tax. I don't feel like it's actually going to make much of an impact because I don't think a lot of people will be taking into account when they are doing things that would actually create a carbon footprint.
Yes, I do believe in that. I think that if companies are contributing to the pollution of the environment, they should be held responsible for that. I think, I think it's carbon emissions and fossil fuels and all of these things are things that we need to keep in mind for our future. So my father owns a clean tech company where he works on carbon emissions and having solutions for that kind of thing. I think it's an important thing for my family and I. So, yeah.
I think it's a good thing because there's certain companies that make their money by producing lots and lots of carbon, like coal companies and stuff. And if your business is polluting, then you have to be held accountable for that. I mean, a normal everyday business like a convenience store, it doesn't matter that much. But if your business is literally burning 55 tons of coal every day, then you got to be held accountable for that.
No, not at all. It shouldn't be like that. It should be left down to the people that are developing these products, and it shouldn't be done to the end user. The end user should have everything built in already. It's just like a tax. When they purchase it, they don't have to think twice about it. We have to have social, conscious of our environment and so on and so forth. And I do believe that the people that are manufacturing, distributing, and all these other type of things should have more emphasis on protecting the climate.
I agree with the carbon tax. I know it's a hard one for a lot of people to swallow. I actually believe that it should be probably a little bit more ardent because as it comes up in very small incremental stages, people simply absorb it and don't actually make the lifestyle changes that the tax is actually focused on making. So yeah, I'm a supporter of it and think that in the ultimate picture, it definitely should be a little bit higher.
I'm just not sure that it's really effective. So maybe it is in charging more, but I think that there needs to be a decision made just within all of us that we want to reduce it, and there isn't a tax or it's not favorable, but that it's the right thing to do. So I'm just not sure about monetary penalties actually working. I think that organizations and people can work around them. So if you're not in with the intent of it, I'm not sure that it'll be very effective.
I think we pay enough taxes on our houses, our land, because I own an acreage in Falkland, and I pay a lot. And I think that maybe instead of keep charging everybody, they should probably start using what they have in a different way. I think the country should be run by an accountant.
Well, somebody's got to pay for it, and unfortunately we are the taxpayers, and that's just what it happens. I mean, we can argue till we're black and blue, but it's not going to change. It's the little guy that's going to pay for it in the long run. But if our air is cleaner, so be it.
Yeah, I think we should have a carbon tax because it does create a lot of pollution, you know, and the money has to come from somewhere to enjoy. Everybody enjoys their vehicles, whether it's going out to the lake or going up in the mountains for a hike, you know, it still affects the atmosphere.
I don't believe that the carbon tax is effective at curbing anybody's driving or use of, because people will drive whatever amount they wish and they'll pay the additional costs. They'll grumble, they'll complain, but they will continue to pay. I don't have a vehicle at the moment, but when I do, I will drive, I will pay for it. I won't like it, I'll grumble, but I will still drive as much as I wish.
I'm kind of on the fence about that one, maybe until I can see what they're going to do with the extra money. That maybe I'll be a little more supportive.
William Hall became the first Black Canadian to receive what award? Victoria Cross, Order of Canada, Dufferin Medal.
I would have to do the Order of Canada.
Victoria Cross.
Victoria Cross.
Dufferin Medal.
Order of Canada. Nope.
Victoria Cross.
It is Victoria Cross.
Thanks.
Very good. William Edward Hall became the first Black person, the first Nova Scotian, and the third Canadian to receive the Victoria Cross. The award was introduced in 1856 by Queen Victoria to honor acts of valor during the Crimean War. Canada's universal healthcare system has long been a source of pride for this country, but it's not without its flaws. Wait times have doubled since 1993, and many patients are forced to wait for the care they so desperately need. Others have resorted to going elsewhere to be treated. U.S. President Donald Trump once described Canada's healthcare system as catastrophic. So once again, we take to the streets to get your angle. Our question: what are your ideas to improve Canada's healthcare system?
Oh my, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. It takes too long for everybody to get to where they're going as far as doctors are concerned. I don't know what the answer is to that. More doctors, more nurses. They build brand new hospitals and there's still a wait list. Or you go there and they can't take you because there's no beds. Brand new hospital. I don't get it. I don't know what the answer is for that.
We need to get a populace that actually believes in doing something for themselves. And of course, you know, if you need help, by all means. But health by fitness, diet, everything else, it's really, really important. So back to public awareness. It reminds me of the campaign that they had many, many years ago in Canada about walk a block a day. And they were comparing the average health of Canadians to Swedes. And a 60-year-old Swede was healthier than a 30-year-old Canadian. I think we've got to get back to that kind of awareness.
I spent 20 years with a green card living in the States, so I love Canada's healthcare system, to be honest with you. And it's very costly south of the border, and the deductibles were so high that minor things that we take for granted here are never covered. They're out-of-pocket expenses. I think the big things are covered well, but even those have caps on them. So we've had an unfortunate accident in our family where my son was in a very serious motorcycle accident. He's recovering very well. He still continues to receive BC Medicare for that and for his therapies and wheelchairs, and he would have maxed out where I had lived years ago and probably been at home without all the additional therapies that he needs. So I am a really big fan of it, and I know that's not going to be popular with everybody, but I really like it. It's things that we we just take for granted. But even the same medication that's made by the same companies is much cheaper in BC than south of the border, and I know that for a fact. So we're actually quite privileged.
Drugs cost too much. The drug companies got to be regulated more by, I guess, overseen by the government more, because it's just ridiculous. Like, I'm on Humira, and if it's $1,800 for a little, for a shot. I have to take 2 of them a week, eh? And any normal person can't afford that.
Well, I think in the province here that administration costs are higher than they should be. I think there are more administrators than they really need, and that's just my personal opinion.
We've brought a lot of doctors in from overseas, and I say open the doors. If we can't educate our own medical doctors and healthcare people, then we should be bringing them in.
Maybe we should take a step back and look at Sweden and see what they do, because honestly, we have no healthcare system here that is working. There are people being turned away, sitting in corridors like my uncle did when he had cancer, with a sheet around him. It's disgusting, and something needs to be addressed. Why can Sweden do what it does and we cannot? I don't understand.
Improve it. First of all, we need to I think we have one of the better healthcare systems, number one. First of all, we have to hire more personnel, more nurses, more doctors. It seems in certain areas there's hardly any doctors to be found, and a lot of people cannot find any doctors here in Okanagan or Vancouver. And so hire more personnel all around.
I think there's a lot of people that show up that really, like when you go to emergency, like if you implement some kind of a minimal charge, then like a lot of these cases that are not for emergency, they don't really have to go to emergency. And then I think, I think there's also a lot of waste in I think we have too much bureaucracy and not enough frontline workers.
I think, more transparency, as in, I know they're going in the right direction now with patients having access to their records, so you're not ever in the dark. It's slowly coming. I know I've registered for the Ottawa Hospital's patient records system. That looks like it's a recent improvement. But I'd like to see that kind of going even more, to be able to access my doctor's records, everything all in one place.
We need better organizational skills, better timing. We have enough money in the system right now. There's enough doctors out there to take care of everything. I just think that they needed to streamline the administration portion of our healthcare system.
When did Lincoln Alexander become the first black member of Parliament? 1950, 1962, 1968.
62.
1968. 1968.
I'll put 68, 1968.
50? 1950?
1968.
It is 1968.
Oh, yay. Okay.
After an unsuccessful run in the 1965 federal election, 3 years later, in 1968, Lincoln Alexander was elected to the federal riding of Hamilton West, making him the first black person elected to the House of Commons. But his achievements did not stop there. In 1985, Alexander was sworn in as Ontario's 24th Lieutenant Governor, the first Black Canadian to be appointed to a vice-regal position in Canada. In Canada, there is no limit to how many times a candidate can run for office in any level of government, although retirement is mandatory for senators who are not elected. In the U.S., a president can only serve for 2 four-year terms. Some say term limits force change. Others say term limits take rights away from voters. So what do you say? Our question. Should there be term limits for federal politicians?
Term limits for federal politicians. That would fly in the face of, if you can do a good job, you should be able to continue to do a good job. I guess that's what our democracy is all about. I hear a lot of people complaining about people who they don't think are doing a good job, but somehow they seem to get back into power year after year after year. So I don't really think that there should be a term. I just think that people should put their money where their mouth is and vote for those that do actually a good job.
No. Because if you're doing a good job, why should you quit? Or are you forced to quit? You're not forced to retire. I'm not forced to retire. Why should he be forced to retire, or she?
You know what, I agree with that. I think that there should be terms on it, largely because there may be some bias that I've sensed with politicians that are in office for too long, and they have their way of looking at things and may not change with the times. I think that the last administration seemed very pessimistic and threatened, and that affected everybody's outlook. So we're much more optimistic today, and I think that that may have been because of such a long time in office and maybe just looking through a certain lens for so long.
No, I don't think there should be any term limits. You know, if there's a good politician, you're doing your job. He's accomplishing a lot, he's helping a lot of people, you know, but people that, politicians that just work for a few years and they get a big pension, you know, that's not right. No, I think they should work, any politician should work 30 years to get a pension, you know, a proper pension.
I truly feel that 4 years is not enough for someone in politics to even get their feet wet. And they need to be longer in office to do what they need to do and to deal with all the stuff that comes down the pike.
Whether it's 8 years or 12 years, I think 8 years is kind of a good amount of time that for an MP to try to make a difference and do his job, maybe even 12 years. But no, I don't think it should be just an automatic year after year after year until you're retired. I think there needs to be new blood coming in.
Opinions do age. So when you have a person that is in his 70s, sitting as a senator, he might be out of touch, generational speaking, towards how the new youth of the country would like to grow the country.
I don't see why there needs to be. I think it all comes down to how well they're doing. If it's a great leader, then, you know, I think that leader should be reelected as many number of times as we possibly can because we want great leadership. So I think putting that limit sort of takes great leadership out of race sometimes.
If the politician is doing a great job, I would say no. If the politician is doing a lousy job, I would say yes. So that's that's my opinion.
So you sound like you're kind of on the fence a little.
Yeah, no, I would say no, and I would hope that the politician is doing a great job. But sometimes politicians don't do that great of a job.
I think so. We've had a couple politicians who've been in for way longer than they should have been and kind of got bored with what they were doing. I also feel like, in a way, it's good that our politicians can stay a little bit longer because often the first 4 years that they're in, they're trying to change what had happened previously over to their mandate, and then they get started after that.
Okay. What about
You know, I think it is. It would be a good thing to have a limit on it. We need sort of new ideas, and they get in, they get comfortable with things, and so if they know they're not in there for, they might be more apt to try to keep their promises, or if they know, well, I'm not just in this for the long term, I can do it as long as I want. So I do think it's good to change it up. Absolutely.
I think that it should be the people's vote in terms of renewing someone, but I don't think there should be a limit on how long someone should be, because you know, a term could end and we could have someone new that we have to have someone new, but we would have rather have the other person. I think it's up to the people's vote on who's best to serve our country, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, at some point you have to turn over the job to get fresh blood in there. You can't be in office for 20, 30 years. I mean, at some point you got to let somebody else take the reins, if nothing else, because time marches on, you know. You can't have the same person doing the same thing for that long, you know. That'd be my take on it.
These days, the way people communicate and exchange information has changed dramatically. Tools like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are a huge part of that. Social media also has changed the way politicians and political parties communicate with the voting public. So, in this age of instant communication and information, we took this question to the streets. How has social media influenced the way you follow federal politics?
I really like social media for that. I just jump onto Twitter when I can. I love to hear President Trump's tweets. I know that they're very controversial, but I feel like I have a greater pulse on what's going on. I think I did an online survey in Canada about what we thought about a year ago, and it all came through my email. And I really liked completing that and getting the results and seeing which group I landed in. So it's much, much quicker than days gone by. So I'm actually a fan of it.
I don't follow federal politics on the social media. I watch the news. I think social media is lovely and great, but when you start putting politics into it, it just loses the personality, because now your opinion has gone everywhere, and people that don't like it are just vicious.
And I find it pretty ignorant. I know personally I've got friends that are, you know, my age on Facebook, and I see terrible stuff on there, and to me it's you have not made the attempt to learn about what's going on, what the issues are, and you're just sitting there pressing buttons and making comments that are not beneficial to anybody. All they do is show the person's ignorance.
I again, as a person that doesn't really use a lot of social media, I'm very skeptical of social media. I think it's a small platform and doesn't provide really a great background. So if somebody's looking into an individual story, they probably won't get a huge amount of depth through social media. They will probably get a lot of people's bulk opinions, but not really be able to understand the situation. So yeah, I would, in fact, I think that social media is one of the causes of why we have certain things that we have around the planet right now, including, of course, and most particularly the United States and the president that they currently have.
I think social media, while it tries to act as a tool to facilitate political discussions, I think it distorts our view on politics itself, because one, we have people you know, spreading their own opinion obviously in politics, but spreading you know, making assumptions and claims and you know, and putting those assumptions and claims into their political background as the justification for that. So we got a lot of distorted views on what actual political parties stand for based on people inserting their opinions.
Oh, well, I see those things come up on Facebook all the time. People making political jokes, memes about Trudeau and his people kind, you know, things like that. People kind is trending and going viral, so stuff like that's really stuff that you wouldn't see in the past, you know.
To be honest and frank, I don't follow federal politics on a regular basis. Social media to me is more of a personal stay in touch with my family thing. Personally, it doesn't influence me in any way, but I can see it influencing people because, you know, it's easy access to information and it's right at your fingertips.
But back in the old days when I was much younger, the weirdos and all those other guys, the extremists, you didn't hear from them. But now everybody can throw in their 2 cents, and that just sometimes it just creates problems. So I think social media has had an adverse impact because now everybody can throw in their opinion regardless of how terrible it is or how extremist it is. So, yeah.
Not really at all, actually. I just keep on watching CPAC on TV. I don't really need to have a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed to tell me what's going on. I just view you guys every 24 hours or so to see what's going on. Move on with life.
Who was the first black person appointed to the Senate? Donald Oliver, Ann Cools, Calvin Ruck. So Oliver, Cools, or Ruck?
Cools.
I'm gonna have to go with Ruck.
And Cools.
I like the name Calvin Ruck. I like Ruck. Calvin Ruck.
Ruck sounds familiar to me, so that's what I was going to go with too.
Yeah. And Cools? And Cools? And Cools?
It's Ann Cools.
Done. 3 trivia questions. 3 out of 3.
Ann Cools was appointed to the Senate by Pierre Trudeau in 1984, making her the first black person to become a Canadian senator. That's all for this episode of Outburst on CPAC. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube simply by searching CPAC, and on Twitter at CPAC_TV. You'll find more great content there, and you can weigh in on the issues that matter to you the most. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs channel, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Outburst.